And hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the television show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We are delighted to be joined today by Dr. Vicki Stroeher, a music professor at Marshall University, professor of music history, and also the program director for the School of Music at Marshall University, to talk to us today about her new nonfiction book, My Beloved Man, The Letters of Benjamin Britten and Pears. And Dr. Stroeher is a professor of music at Marshall and also the director of the School of Music. She's also the coordinator of music history and literature, and she's the chapter advisor for the Delta Kappa chapter of the Delta Omicron International Music Fraternity. She earned her PhD in musicology with a secondary specialization in music theory from the University of North Texas in 1994. Among her mentors are Michael Collins, Graham Phipps, Deanna Bush, A. Peter Brown, and Ellsworth Peterson. And she's taught previously at Augusta State University in Augusta, Georgia, Phillips University in Enid, Oklahoma, and Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth. She's active in many professional organizations, including the North American British Music Studies Association, the American Musicological Society, where she was the AMS Council representative for 2 years, the Allegheny chapter of the American Musicological Society, the Royal Musical Association, the Society of Music Theory, amongst many other responsibilities. And we're delighted to have her today to talk to us about this outstanding new book. So, Vicki, welcome to Chapters. Good to have you. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Eliot. Thank you for having me to talk about this book.
I wanted to ask you before we get into your book, when was the first time you got interested in music and in music history?
I first got interested in music around the age of 4. My mother was a piano teacher, and she would have a number of students over to take lessons, and I saw all of this going on. My older brother got to take piano lessons, and so I begged and begged and begged, and she finally started having lessons for me when I was 5. So music has been a part of my life for a very long time. My grandmother played the piano and organ at church, and so there you have it.
So you've been interested in music and involved in music in one way, shape, or another
In
all
one
that
way,
time.
shape, or another, right.
Very good.
It wasn't until I started in college that I realized that there was music history, and I fell in love with it. In fact, one of my mentors, Ellsworth Peterson at Southwestern University in good old Georgetown, Texas, introduced me to musicology. He introduced me to the music of Benjamin Britten, and the rest fell into line, as it were.
And your new book, My Beloved Man, focuses on the letters between two people, Benjamin Britten and Peter Pears, who were both fascinating people in and of their own right. Tell us a little bit about who these two men were. We'll start first with Benjamin Britten. Give us a little bit of a background on who he was as a person and as a musician.
Benjamin Britten is probably the most important English composer of the 20th century. He takes his place alongside a few other giants such as Ralph Vaughan Williams and Michael Tippett. But in terms of an international stature, Benjamin Britten is probably the one who has the largest international reputation. He was known primarily as a composer of operas. In fact, it was sort of long believed that opera had lain fallow in England since the 1690s, and that when Britten's opera Peter Grimes had a wonderful premiere in 1945, that he put English opera sort of back on the map. It's not entirely true, but it's a lovely story to tell. Peter Pears was an English tenor, and he, through Britten's operas, became probably the most important English tenor of his generation as well. So it's like you have these two giants of music sort of coming together, as it were.
And one of the interesting factors about these two men, in addition to their musical talents, was they were in a relationship together. And I know you focus
Yes.
on that quite a bit in the book. They got together around 1937, and Britten died in 1976. Peter Pears lived 10 more years to 1986. How did they adapt, or how did they work through being in a relationship together, despite the fact that they were doing music, writing music and performing and being involved in performances? How were they able to balance that with what they were doing professionally?
Right. Well, I think the letters show that it was a delicate balancing act for them. There were a number of factors that they had to negotiate. The first of which was that homosexuality was criminal in England until 1967. And so they could never really give an outward appearance of what was going on with their inward relationship, even though it seems like after a while everybody had figured it out, as it were. They maintained, Peter Pears maintained a residence in London. Britten maintained a residence first in Snape, which is on the Suffolk coast, and then in Aldborough, which is on the Suffolk coast. Peter Pears also had a room in the houses where Britten lived in Aldborough, and Britten also maintained a room in Peter Pears's flats in London. So they sort of have maintained separate living spaces as best they could. In terms of their careers, Britten was often in Aldborough or Snape composing, working on projects, while Pears was in London or based in London, and then going out around to the provinces or going to Germany, Scotland, Wales, even over here in the States to perform.
So they were able, despite the fact of being very busy, to maintain that balance between
Right.
work and their relationship.
Right.
And
It's always very interesting. There are YouTube videos of them performing together because they were also a recital partnership with Britten playing piano and Pears singing. But also Britten conducted a number of times when Pears was performing. And they never gave any hint that there was anything other than their professional relationship. When Pears would finish singing, Britten would turn, give him a bit of a smile, give him the perfunctory handshake without any indication that there was more.
interesting. So from an audience, if you were in the audience watching that, you wouldn't have noticed anything.
You would not have known that anything was going on under the surface.
Interesting, very interesting. And I know Peter Pears was really the sort of the record keeper of the relationship. He kept a lot of letters, and I know that
Yes.
one of the things that we see in your book is a lot of those letters correspondence back and forth. And you talk about that one of the goals that he wanted to do was publish these letters before he died in 1986,
Yes.
and it never happened until you really came across it.
Right.
So tell us about that process. How did you find where they were, and what was it like when you came upon this treasure trove of letters for the first time?
The letters they were held in the Britten Pears Foundation archive. And they had been kept there in a box, in the same box that they had always been in for years. The folks at the archive, the librarians and the archivist, finally started going through them and trying to put them into order and make sure that they were preserved absolutely. And that's the state that I came across them in, was in this several big notebooks of where they had very gingerly put them into sleeves. So I was talking with the director of the library, and I said, has anyone talked about, or has anyone decided to publish these? And he said no, and I said, then I'd like to do it.
Wow.
So along the way, one of the archivists, Jude Bremer, contacted me and said, I would love to work with you on this project if you'll have me. It's like, of course I'll have you. So she came onto the project, and then we also brought the librarian Nick Clark, who's also at the Britten Pears Foundation, onto the project as well. So it's the product of three of us, each doing different, similar things, but different things as well.
And this took you about how long from the time you found those letters and reached out to Nicholas Clark and Jude Bremer to the time the book was published? How much time transpired? How long did it take you to get all this put together in the book?
It was 4 years of transcribing the letters, annotating the letters, writing introductions to the letters, another year for production. So I guess in total a 5-year process.
Very good, very interesting. We've had a lot of nonfiction writers on the program talk about how when you're putting a nonfiction work together, you're looking at letters or diary entries or manuscripts that someone else has done, how important it is to have sort of a team with you and how valuable librarians are in this process. Can you talk about how, and I know you alluded to this a moment ago, but how Nicholas Clark and Jude Bremer really helped support you in this project and some of the contributions they made, because I'm sure that you couldn't do a project like this on your own totally without their support.
Right. One of the first things that we had to do was transcribe the letters. Some of the letters had been transcribed before, but one of the things that we wanted to do in particular was transcribe even things that had been crossed out. Also to transcribe misspellings, bad grammar, things that some other editors who have reproduced some of the letters have done. So Jude and I were the primary transcribers for the letters. Then Nick came in and annotated a couple of the chapters. That annotation is where you try to figure out what they're talking about in the letter, who they're talking about, and why they're talking about it. So Nick and I were the chief annotators, as it were. I annotated, there are 8 chapters. I annotated 6 of the chapters. Nick did 2. And then Nick and I wrote chapter introductions, the main introduction. I think Jude wrote one of the introductions to one of the chapters. And then Jude was, we called her our showrunner. She made sure that every comma, every period, every ampersand was exactly in the right place.
So definitely your
Someone
quality
had
control
to do
person.
it. Yeah,
Right.
she was our quality control person. She kept us moving, kept us on track. Jude and Nick were the archives in Aldborough. The Britten Pears Foundation it's a treasure trove, as you say, of all sorts of things. And so they were able to confirm or say, no, that's not that person, that it's this person, when we were doing the annotations.
Very good. So
Looking up, trying to find people.
Yeah, very good. So it really was a true team effort. Everybody
Right,
had to contribute.
absolutely.
We're going to put a picture of the cover up on the screen for our audience, but we see a picture of Benjamin Britten and Peter Pears in this picture. Can you tell us a little bit about where they are and where you found that picture?
In this picture, they are actually here. Well, hold on. Let me give it a look. Let me make sure I'm going to get exactly the right one. Actually, they are at Britten's house in Aldborough on Crag Path. Crag Path overlooks the sea, the North Sea, and Crab House, which is where they are, they're in the back in the garden, overlooks the sea as well. So that would have been taken in the late 1940s. They moved there in 1947, and then they moved away from the seafront in 1953 to where the archives is located.
Very good. One of the interesting things, back to Benjamin Britten for just a minute, and doing some research on him, and I know you and I talked about this before we went on the air here for our interview, is Britten was someone that for lack of a better expression, didn't really suffer fools lightly.
Right.
And he had a term for people that he didn't like or he felt like had betrayed him along the way. He called them his corpses.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, and was he a difficult person to get along with, Britten, and what did you, if you were someone that was a friend of his, a fellow composer of his, someone he worked with, what would you have to do to get into that category of being considered a corpse? What was it that made you on that list if he designated you there? What got you there? What got you in trouble with him?
If you didn't behave in a professional manner and do what you had said that you would do. He, above all, was a professional musician and a professional composer, and professionalism to him was the height of achievement. It was the height of distinction. And so if you behaved in a manner that was not professional, if you did not put your absolute best foot forward, your best performance forward, it was okay if the performance didn't come up to a certain standard, as long as you were doing your best. But the minute that you didn't, you sort of became a corpse. Also, you didn't say things about Peter Pears either. Mm-hmm. Or you didn't say things to Peter Pears about Britten. They were a closed unit. And so, as many couples are, I mean, they are an ordinary couple. Mm-hmm. And if you say something against one partner, well, you're done for.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because at the very least, it's going to get back to the other partner that
right.
so-and-so said this about you.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Very good. You mentioned a few moments ago that homosexuality in Britain was banned until 1967, and we get a sense when we look at some of the information that's in your book that they really had to keep their relationship secret, and you talked about how nobody right. watching them perform together would notice anything different. Right. What was at risk for them, or what did you get a sense of was at risk for them, maybe personally and professionally, if they had been found out that they were a couple? Because I know that was a different time, and nowadays with same-sex marriage being legalized in the United right. States and so many other countries being accepting of that, we often forget there was a time when that wasn't accepting. Right. So what would they have jeopardized professionally and personally if it had been a more widely known issue that they were in a relationship or that they were a couple? Did you get a sense of that from the letters?
Yes, they would have been utterly destroyed. They never would have worked again. Britten's works would have been rejected. He would not have gotten commissions. He would not have gotten performances, particularly in England. Pears probably would have never sung again, but more importantly, they would have been arrested. They date from the same time as Alan Turing. In fact, they were contemporaries with Alan Turing. Alan Turing was arrested in, I believe, 1952 and was imprisoned for his relationship. Britten was questioned in 1953, actually, and I think it was because they maintained separate households, because they had 2 rooms instead of 1, that kept that they had an appearance of not being together.
Yeah, and I found that interesting. And you mentioned Alan Turing, and we see, there was the movie made a few years ago with Benedict Cumberbatch where he portrays
right.
him. And Alan Turing was the one who helped figure out the decoding of
right.
the Nazis that helped, Britain and the Allies win World War II. And it's just interesting to think about now, looking back. We have a hard time imagining or realizing that there was a time when,
right.
when that was looked at as a crime or as something that was punishable by arrest.
Right. Britten and Pears had a number of ventures that they were involved in, not just, their composing, not just their performing, not just Pears's singing. They had a festival, the Aldborough Festival of Music and the Arts, that they began planning in 1947. They mounted the first one in 1948, and it's been going on ever since. And that would have all come as it crumbling down. They also founded in 1946 the English Opera Group, which was an opera company. And of course, that too would have been affected. So it wasn't just them. If they got into trouble, a number of other people's livelihoods would have also been affected as well.
We mentioned that Britten dies in 76.
Yes.
Peter Pears lives 10 years after that and dies in 1986. What was Britten's later years like? Up until his death, and then was Pears able to move on? And what was his life like 10 years after his partner had died?
In 1972, they found that Britten had a heart valve problem, and they wanted to operate in early 1973, but he was involved in writing his last opera, which was Death in Venice, based on the Thomas Mann novello. And he wanted to complete that opera because there was an uncertain outcome with the operation. He had the operation in 1974 after Death in Venice was completed, missed a premiere here in the United States because of it. But while he was on the table, a piece of plaque dislodged, and that caused a stroke on his right side. So he was unable to compose and write just real well. His assistants made sort of a little short manuscript paper on which he could write, but his voice, if you get the book and read the book, you'll find that his voice begins to fade after 1974. There are very few letters that he wrote in 1975. So he was fairly well invalided from that point on. He was made a life peerage, Lord Britten, in 76, and then he died in December. Pears continued performing. Pears continued teaching at the Britten Pears School of Music that they had there in Suffolk. He lived his life alone. There were friends who came in and were with him, but nothing to the extent of the love of his life, Britten. So in 1985, he had a small stroke and fell in the garden, and then he died in 1986.
1986. So, very, very much, very much this book is about. Not just their accomplishments, but about the relationship.
It's about the relationship.
And you get a sense of how
Right.
much love and affection they had
Right.
for each other through the letters. So, Vicki, in our final moments with you, if anyone would like to get in contact with you to talk to you about your research and about this book, My Beloved Man, or if they'd like to get a copy of the book, how can they get in contact with you, and where can they get a copy of your book?
Well, it's available on Amazon.com. I believe it sells for $45, but I think Amazon is running some specials on it. I think it's around $30. Also, you can get it through our publisher, Boydell, at Boydell and Brewer. And if they want to contact me, they can call me at my Marshall office. Do I need the phone number?
Yes.
Sure.
What is that number?
Sure, 304-696-6437.
Very
So-
good. Very good. Well, congratulations on the publication
Well,
of the
thank you.
book. Dr. Vicki Stroeher, professor of music history at Marshall University and also the program director for the School of Music, has been our guest today here on Chapters. We've been talking about her outstanding new book, My Beloved Man, The Letters of Benjamin Britten and Peter Pears, edited by Jude Bremer and also Nicholas Clark with a foreword by Fiona Shaw. It is a wonderful book, a great insight into musical history, British musical history, but also a great story about love and affection. And we congratulate you on the book, and best of luck to you with it and all your future research projects. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And we want to take a moment to thank Natalie Sheets and the staff and management of Empire Books and News for their on-site support and assistance today. We encourage you to come down to Empire Books and News to pick up a copy of Vicki's book or any other books that you've seen available and featured here on the Chapters program. Plus, Empire Books and News has the largest selection of magazines anywhere in the Tri-States. If you're a magazine reader, Empire Books and News is the place for you, and we appreciate them sponsoring us each and every episode here on Chapters. And if you're a social media user, we've made several ways possible for you to stay in contact with the program and reach out to us on the show. One of those is through email. The email address to the show here is lp4@zoominternet.net, and that address is right there at the bottom of the screen. So please send us an email and let us know your name and where you're writing from so that we can keep track of that correspondence. If you like to watch programs on YouTube, there is a Chapters tab through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube, and that address is youtube.com/Armstrong One Wire, all one word, and from there just click on the Chapters tab, and we've got all of our interviews archived for you there from our 3+ years of author, publisher, and editor interviews, all there for you on the Armstrong One Wire Chapters YouTube page. And if you're a Facebook user, we have a Facebook page for Chapters. All you need to do is go to facebook.com/Chapters, or type in Chapters in the search field, and there you can see archived our most recent episodes and also interact and comment and discuss the program with viewers who watch Chapters on a regular basis. So whatever social media platform you like or that you're comfortable with, we've made it possible for you to stay in contact with the program and check out old episodes and archived episodes of the program through one of those means. So please keep in contact with us. We appreciate the feedback and the comments that we do receive. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.